So now we're going to get into what is called your story of struggle or your kryptonite story. Because now, like, connecting with your audience. So in other words, your target market is really important, is really an important part of being successful as an entrepreneur. So connecting with them, resonating with them, that's really important. Because if you don't know who your ideal target market is, or you're not able to connect with them, then a lot of times, you're going to be struggling to find clients or getting people to buy your products or services. So that's really what we're trying to do here with building your story of authority. We're not trying to force products or services onto people. We just want them to connect with you on a deeper level by using a good story and elements that make up a good story, so that you can create, a lot of curiosity in your product or service, or a lot of interest. It's all about the storytelling. And a good model that I like to use is something called the superhero model. In other words, every superhero has a flaw, and people love superheroes because because of the nature of the story. So, for example, if you take Superman. Now, Superman is all powerful. He's one of those heroes that a lot of kids look up to as they're growing up. He represents all the things that most people aspire to be. Good over evil, and he's also modest. But Superman has a weakness, and that one weakness, that one fatal flaw, and that's his kryptonite. And that's one of the reasons why a lot of people will call this your kryptonite story, because it represents the fact that everyone has a failure in life. Most people completely hide their failures and their weaknesses. I've done episodes in the past where all I did was I talked about all my failures and all my weaknesses. Because a lot of times I used to hide behind stuff like that, like failures. But now it's like, it's part of me. It's part of my story. So getting that information out there is very important when you're building your story of authority. But the amazing thing is that that's actually what makes us human, is the fact that we fail, we learn, we eventually overcome and succeed. And that's what a lot of people like, is that sort of superhero, or that hero model, or that story of transformation from how things used to be, and how the struggles and the frustrations, and how you came across the solution that worked for you, and you implemented it, and you saw success, and now you're out there helping other people do the same thing, that have this similar challenges. So there's a tremendous strength in that sort of vulnerability. Is very powerful. Being transparent and talking about not just the awards you've won, or all the accomplishments, or how great you are, or being a guru. It's also about it's important to be transparent with a lot of the challenges that you've had, or the failures or tragedies that you've had in your life, because that's what leads to that sort of authentic connection, or people see you as a real person and not somebody on a pedestal. If all somebody hears about is how great you are, it gets tiresome after time, and it almost seems like you never fail and you've never suffered, and people just are going to have a really hard time relating to you. So people always like to cheer for that underdog. Think about when you're flipping channels, even if you're not that engaged, but you come across a sports where one of the team is so far down, you start to watch the game, and then it gets really interesting as the underdog starts to come back, and you eventually you're cheering for that underdog. And a lot of times going into larger sporting events, people just like to cheer for the underdog, even though they may not have any connection to either team, but they just like to cheer for the underdog because they just like that sort of underdog story. Because everyone wants to see somebody who is not meant to succeed to overcome a lot of challenges to end up succeeding in the future. So as for you as an entrepreneur, chances are you've experienced a lot of these, and the hardest part is being willing to share your failures and your weaknesses. Like I said, for many years, I've sort of hidden a lot of my challenges, and I just would always talk about the great things. Some of them being, let's see, some of the failures were, starting other companies and partnerships not working out, things like that. Those are some failures in some businesses. Struggling with the real estate investing and being an introvert is part of, and not being able to pick up the phone and call people or knock on a door. So things like that. So, having people being able to relate to you, being vulnerable, bringing up those failures that you've had in the past, the challenges, and just making them part of your story, because everyone's going to root for the underdog. Everyone likes to see that transformation journey, that hero story. Most people will resonate with that. And so in going through that, you also want to share, what were some of the lessons that you learned in going through some of the challenges that you had to go through. So it's really important that people know this about you, not just your successes, but your achievement, not just your successes and your achievements, but also what challenges and trials and tribulations that you actually had to push through. What did you learn, and learn from each of those experiences, and you tell those in a story, because people really want to know that kind of stuff. Is how did you overcome that? So telling the story is really an incredible part. Whether you're a writer, speaker, author, entrepreneur, it doesn't really matter. Telling those stories of how you overcame those challenges somewhere in your marketing is very powerful to connecting with your audience and the story that you're trying to tell them. So that's part number one. Segment number one is your kryptonite story, or your story of challenges. I'm just going to I see a couple notes here. I just want to follow up, see if they actually have any relevance to what I'm talking about, or they're just comments. So see, Chris Miller joined us. Andy Lockwood says Superman. McCabe, really try Wonder Woman. Okay, thanks for that, Andy. Chris Miller, but I'm just a regular guy. No sensational story yet, but he's learning. So they don't have to be sensational stories. They're just stories of struggles that you've had in what it is that you do and how you actually overcame those challenges. And you can inspire people by just telling that story of, this is what my life was like prior. Here's the struggles and the challenges I had, and here's what I actually did to overcome those challenges. Here's what I implemented. Here's what I put together. Here's how I made it happen. And then this is the result of me implementing a lot of those things, is that, I generated more sales, or I became more successful, or whatever the end result is, whatever ends that transformation. And people like that story. And if they're the type of people that your ideal target market, and when you're telling this story, and this is very powerful. A lot of my private clients, I tell them this when they're going to get testimonials or have people, talk about their product or services. Don't just sit there and talk about, use Sally's waxing service. I can just hear Andy Lockwood now. Use Sally's bakery because Sally bakes the best cakes that I've ever tasted. No, it's like, tell a story about how Sally, how Sally struggled to, or tie a story. I got myself so confused because of worrying about what Andy Lockwood's going to say. But just telling stories of transformation. Actually last week I had my one of my private clients on. We were doing a book launch for her, and she has a lot of great stories, transformational stories of testimonials from her clients, how they were in so much pain they couldn't even dress themselves. Their spouse had to dress them, and then they tried everything. They were on a lot of medication that just wasn't working, and they were introduced to my client, who has a light therapy unit that helps reduce the inflammation. After several sessions of using that home light therapy unit, they were able to, be pretty much pain-free, get off a lot of the medication, things like that. So that type of transformation story is going to resonate with somebody who is in a very similar situation, who is going through a lot of pain, and they've tried just about everything, and the doctor has them on these painkillers that are, rotting their stomach or whatever, and just that transformation story is going to resonate with them. Well, you have your own transformation story with respect to your business or what it is that you do. Why did you get into what it is you're doing? If you're just doing it just to make money or just for a job, that's not compelling enough, story as to that's going to resonate with anybody. So you really need to bring in that vulnerability stuff. So it's really your kryptonite story, or what people have, how people can resonate with you from your struggles or your failures or challenges that you've had in the past.